of Commerce, and one more is from Library Science.
Good morning, madam.
Good morning. Good to see each other. So
Yeah.
long we have been talking over the phone.
Yeah.
But these online courses, it's really very difficult for people to keep their attention in it. To draw attention, we have to think a lot because their mind gets swayed. Even when we do courses, our minds also get swayed.
That is very true, madam.
But now slowly, madam, we have to cope up this type of the things because the coming days, maybe the higher education system also slightly changing in that direction. No, many government side also, many MOOCs, many online courses they are offering. Even they are talking about digital university or virtual university. Now they are very much talking. So in future, maybe after 20 years, 25 years, everything will be only online.
Yes. So we also have to develop ourselves, train ourselves to prepare and take classes in this way. And students also will have to be should be trained up in that way, right from the school days.
Yeah.
To cope with the online things.
This COVID already, because of the COVID, we have learned many things. Otherwise, if COVID, no online teaching, Zoom, Google Meet. Before that, the majority of us, we don't know these tools and technology, how to use. But this lockdown, the plus point is that even then we cannot say plus point because the majority of the people, they lost many things, their family, their lovers, they lost in this COVID. Many people lost their job. But even then, in the technology background, many things we learn by this, know how to use the Google Meet, online meeting, online classes.
Teachers had a tough time. That is what I will say. We had to learn a lot, develop ourselves considerably. So your semesters are going on?
Yeah, madam. Now almost in our session is regular, means whole COVID also the biggest achievement of the Mizoram University is that our session was not delayed even 10 days. Everything is in the systematic way. So coming 1st December, we are going to have our semester exam.
We are having from the 10th of December.
Other than Mizoram University, all the central university now they are in the process of the admission only, and we are now in the position to conduct our examinations.
So you all had the admissions from the mark sheet. Your single university admissions you all do.
No, not central university. This time, my chancellor decide that we will go individual, means our own. Because when we started admission, that time no advertisement for the admission of the central common entrance test.
UG admissions we are doing through common admission, but PG we did directly. UG admissions we are taking by that common test.
Okay, so that means your UG admissions are taking place now.
No, it's done, already done, finished now. But in our main campus, only PG classes are there.
So now have you all started with your working on your NEP schedules and all?
PG we have already implemented.
NEP?
UG we are working on because we are still waiting for the final guideline from UGC.
Okay. So you will be starting liberal arts or those type of things which the NEP says?
Yeah, that we have to see the guideline, then only we can decide. But yes, we are going to implement.
Yes, the only problem is that with faculty and space, everything has come so very suddenly. The universities have to cope up, and ours is a state university. So we have a lot of problems also.
Actually, madam, all the university they are facing in this regard the problem because the ministry, the UGC is not giving any single rupees in the name of NEP. Whatever the recurring grant only we are receiving. So the ministry side, UGC side, they want to implement a new system, a completely new system They are asking change of the student and all, but infrastructure and other things, we don't get any single money. No university is getting any money.
Yes. With the existing infrastructure, existing stuff,
Yeah.
they want us to
So
do.
many specialized paper they are asking, many even field trip. They are asking every semester 2-3 field trip. But from where money will come, no one is talking about that.
So has the students joined?
Yeah. I
13.
think, madam, already around 17 joined. We have 25 registered participants for this. So
Okay.
I think within 5 minutes we will start, madam.
Okay, you just give me a signal when I need to start. Your participants are from which place?
Madam, majority, I think majority around 15, 16 are from Northeast and around 10 is outside of the Northeast.
Okay.
West Bengal, someone is Rajasthan, UP like this.
So majority is from the Northeast.
Yeah, majority is the Northeast.
Madam, you can go for presentation mode, full screen.
Full screen.
This may be on downside, right side of lower corner, where
Last
60
corner,
view
madam,
option.
downside one percentage sign is there. No, you zoom beside that, before that, one sign is there.
Just before that.
Before, madam, before.
Before this. Yeah.
Before that,
this.
before one.
Yeah, this one. Single click.
So it's okay now?
Oh, not yet. I think.
It
You
was
have to
not click. Again, you.
not that one, madam. After that, next to next.
But I can't see now, no?
Oh no, it's still same. It's not yet gone full screen.
So where to go now?
Just where your cursor is there, just next
It's not
to next.
showing. That is not
you're
showing
not
now.
showing.
Not
Okay.
showing. Here it has come full screen.
Okay. So
In
but
my
we are
case, it
not-
has come full screen.
So maybe, madam, upside, no, top button. There is a injured, then drive, animation, and slideshow.
On the top, I have new share, pause.
Injured, design, animation.
No, those things are not showing now.
Okay, then
No,
escape.
now
Just press
you
escape button.
escape. You just put the button escape first. In keyboard, escape button.
Okay, escape. Oh, now it's
Then
showing.
yeah. So one is a slideshow. Last one, after that, slideshow.
On the top.
No, up,
On the
top.
Top slideshow. Here they're showing mute, so stop video. That slideshow part is not coming.
No, upper side.
Yes,
upper side.
Yes.
Yeah.
upper side I can see
Animation
design.
after this. Yeah, animation. Then after
Now
that.
you have animation. After that, slideshow. After that, madam.
Okay. But here it's showing some other things. This screen has to go first. The upper part is showing something else for which I can't see. It's creating problem now.
F5.
Huh?
Control F5 button.
F5. Nothing is showing now.
Oh, not doing.
What to do now?
Okay. Then some setup related problem issue is there. So I think it may go like this also.
Yeah. So
No, now everything is gone. Your screen sharing is paused.
Oh,
Shall I again join?
Yeah, madam. You leave the meeting, then
stop
again
share.
click and join. It will be okay.
Just stop share, I think we'll do. Stop share and then reshare.
Stop share.
Okay, yes. Then share screen.
Then I go to share screen. So is it okay now?
It's still not in presentation mode, but it's okay. I think it is having some issues.
Now the problem is on the top, I have a line coming up which generally doesn't come, which shows mute, stop video, participant, chat. Those things are coming up. So I can't see
Top row.
the normal lines.
Okay, okay.
Okay,
And
madam,
bottom.
with your mouse, no, you can uplift, you can move that things.
How?
No, with your mouse, you just click
Right.
in that, no, your mouse cursor.
Yes.
So you can shift up and down, no problem. आप उसको माउस से सेलेक्ट करके ऊपर नीचे कर सकते हैं मैडम.
Yeah, I'm selecting.
You are muted, madam. Yeah.
Now how to push this outside?
No, no, it will not go outside, but it will shift up and down.
I've got.
Okay, okay.
Slide
So I think
show.
now we can start. Already 23 participants are there, so time is there. So dear participant, good morning. Today we are going to start our first session with Professor Barnali Sarma. Professor Barnali Sarma is a faculty, Department of History, Guwahati University, Assam. And as you know, the Northeast is a one integrated part of the India. But many people, they don't know about the Northeast culture, their religion, how the people, about the people and all. So today, madam is going to talk about the understanding India, Northeast and role in regional cooperation, how Northeast play the role in regional cooperation. So madam, welcome you in the fifth faculty induction program organized by UGC HRDC Mizoram University. And we are very much thankful that you are ready this morning to deliver your lecture. So, Madam Barnali Sarma is an eminent professor, publishing many papers, research, many invited talk, many very very good professor in the history subject. So, Madam, with this small introduction, I welcome you, and now handing over the session to you for your presentation.
Thank you. I would first like to thank the Mizoram University HRD cell for inviting me to speak here. And before I start, I will actually just say that this lecture was prepared with a view to introduce people to the Northeast. I just now, while talking with the course coordinator, I've come to know that most of them are from Northeast. And here I would start with how the idea of Northeast was conceived by the British, how some of the colonial legacies have brought in some problems, retarded development. With retarded development, we come in with the coming of the insurgency issues and many other border issues. And here again, we look into the new policies which the central government is now working on. The question of Act East policy, where we need to cooperate with the Southeast Asian countries, and this it is expected will help in strengthening our economic base. So here I start. So here, as it is very difficult to draw attention in an online class, I've decided to first bring up the map and discuss issues with some of the slides. So here, as I put it, it is the Northeast. We find that this entire area is bounded by foreign countries like China, Bhutan, Myanmar, Bangladesh. From all sides, we are bounded by foreign countries. We have the Bay region and connect.
Sorry to disturb, madam. Your slide is not moving. You have to click on slide number 2.
I've gone to slide 2.
Just click on that slide.
Okay.
Right side slide list is there. Right side, left side one list is there. Slides, all slides, preview. Just click on second slide. That's all.
But that is not coming when I give this full screen.
Okay, but we are actually not seeing full screen. Still, we are seeing that.
Madam, you just escape your escape button. Escape button, then it will come. Now you can present. Yeah.
Yes, yes. Now moving. Yes, yes,
Yeah.
yes. Now fine.
Now it's moving?
Yeah,
Yeah.
moving. Yes.
Okay. So here what I find is that you see it is connected to the mainland India by a small corridor, which is called the Siliguri corridor. And this entire region of North is connected through this Siliguri corridor, for which we find that along with the border issues, along with many other problems which we have, so this connectivity is also another very important issue which is retarding development here. Now, let's go to how this concept of actually Northeast came in. Earlier, we did have kingdoms. There were even all over India. The concept of India as a whole was not there. We had the Mysore kingdom, we had the Maratha kingdom. In Bengal, we had an independent kingdom. Here in Assam, we had the Ahoms. We had a number of other kingdoms like the Kachari kingdom, Jaintia kingdom, Khasi. Among the Khasis, they had their own kingdoms. The Lushai Hills, wherein independently they had their own chieftains ruling. There were there. The Nagas had their own chieftains ruling. So it was a composite type of different rulers, different chieftains, rulers ruling at different places. But with the coming of the British, the land known today as the Northeast became a part of the British Empire in 1826, when the signing of the Treaty of Yandabu, which marked the end of the Anglo-Burmese War. And with the end of the Anglo-Burmese War, the British had come here not to occupy. They were brought in to help in the fight against the Burmese. But once the Burmese were evacuated from here, the land should have come to the Ahom kingdom. But the British, instead of that, they tried to fill up the vacuum, and the Ahom ruler was sidelined. But in the neighboring hill areas, the independent chieftains were allowed to rule on their own. Aside from the Brahmaputra Valley, which is endowed with a sizable resources and tea culture, which they could easily make out. In 1838, they came to know that Assam can produce very good tea. Gradually, with the process of time in the 19th century, it was found that Assam has a lot of resources, and in the adjoining hill areas, these areas were also gradually brought in. And what we find the British doing was they made it as a buffer zone against the expansive forces of the Burmese, Chinese, French, and later on in the Second World War, we find Japanese. So this Northeast was like used as a buffer zone for them, the frontier areas. And here we find that instead of giving attention towards obviously, British never thought of any development perspective. They had come here as colonial rulers, and many of their policies, instead of bringing in proper administration, rather they were using the local people for having an allegiance towards them, so that they can work as buffer areas and be informed with any foreign invasions which might come from that aspect. Then British, in their administrative policies, had demarcated areas as backward tracts, excluded areas, partially excluded areas where tribal people were left to manage their own affairs. And under the Eastern Bengal Frontier Regulation Act of 1873, we find that they brought in the inner line. Now, by this inner line, they tried to create a divide between the plains people and the hill people. And this had greatly affected had brought in a lot of problems, because earlier it was a relation of cordiality. It was not a relation of exclusion. And it was British who brought in this idea of exclusion. Then, with coming of independence, what we observe is that they follow the same policy, retaining the pre-1947 inner line. They strengthen the traditional institutions, the independent government, strengthen the traditional institutions in the formally excluded and partially excluded areas by creating autonomous councils. Now, this autonomous council grants safeguard to the land ownership from outsides, but at the same time, many of the things associated there even impedes the economic development and infrastructural growth. And with the partition of India, we also find, as I have shown you, that if you look into the map which I had shown earlier, we find that partition of India, a big chunk had come off. Bangladesh, which we call, had become East Bengal, East Pakistan. Bangladesh became East Pakistan. But prior to that, this was a contiguous area. So all our connections with mainland or prior to independence was to a contiguous area. And with the partition, what happened? We lost a number of ports. We lost our communication networks, and these had resulted in retardation in the development of places like of many of these places, like maybe even the hill areas of Khasichanche, hills of Meghalaya, Tripura, so Mizoram. So these had a very close, could have been very closely connected with the mainland, but with partition, we find that a number of other problems that had of isolation, the problem of isolation became more and more, and there was economic marginalization by depriving them from its main maritime outlet, the port harbor of Chittagong. And with this lack of development, what happens? Obviously, insurgency came in, because they found many a time it was found that the government was, in certain cases, appeared to be insensitive. We find that there was lack of development projects, and because of this economic retardation, we also find that the insurgency problem also gradually crept up. Now, this is a map of 1907. This map is of Eastern Bengal and Assam. So what we observe here is that this is the map of Assam. Here, Tripura, Manipur, these were in the princely states. Assam was here. And when we say Assam, even this part of Bangladesh, today Bangladesh, this was also a contiguous land-connected area with mainland India. So whatever you call, be it the jute industry, be it whatever industry, or even that port of Chittagong was a very important port area. We had a number of ports of call where transition of goods used to take place. But these all were stopped with the partition. And again, after partition, for some time it was working. But in 1965, when the Indo-Pak War came in, again we find that there was more stringent laws. And again, after 1972, with the formation of Pakistan or Bangladesh, gradually it was open. But now, with the coming of these new policies of Look East, Act East, here we find that the main strategy is to develop our connectivity with our neighboring areas, so that we can have a very cordial relation with the Southeast Asian areas, which will help in the Indo-Pacific trade concept, which is being worked upon now by the government. The prospect of regional cooperation. So here we find cross-border connectivity brings manifold benefits to countries involved. And in the Bay of Bengal and Indo-Pacific, greater engagement among countries in this geostrategically and economically significant regions have become more crucial in the recent years. And it is an immense scope and potential for greater connectivity in the Bay of Bengal within a collaborative framework which involves India, its eastern neighbors in Southeast Asia, and Japan. Here, Northeast India has a very important role to play. So this is the new policy which we find government working upon. We look into this Indo-Pacific region, and which is expected to help in bringing connectivity and development in this entire area. So earlier we used to have an idea that without European connections we cannot work upon. That is, we were looking more and more towards the west. Now it is the idea of looking more and more towards the east and trying to develop ourselves. Now, when I use this Indo-Pacific construct, it is a construct and is contested by different stakeholders. It is largely perceived as an interconnected space in this region, across the two continents of Asia and Africa, and between the Indian Ocean and the Pacific Ocean. This is the Indian Ocean and the Pacific Ocean. We find it is a idea of connecting the two. And the region is one of the most crucial trading routes. It is one of the most crucial trading routes and is a continuum across two oceans joined together by its main trading channels, the Straits of Malacca. So here we have an idea of not only connecting with this, but even trying to go beyond Singapore. That is what is working in the present idea of trade, which is in the discussion forum now. Now, to reap benefits of these regional interactions, a certain degree of connectivity needs to take place. The national interests can be varied. India has their own interests. So the other Southeast Asian countries, they have their own interests. But this, we need to come to some points. And here also we need to look into the issues encompassing geopolitical, geostrategic, and geo-economic. It is important to see connectivity as a holistic concept, and that leads to transformation of people's lives rather than mere building physical infrastructure for immediate strategic and commercial benefits. Now, why we are looking into this entire Northeast concept? Now, let me once again go to that map. So what we find here, this map shows that we had a connection with the Northeast, with the other countries nearby. Now, if you look into the Ahom, what I told you in Assam, we had the Ahom kingdom. They had come from South China. Then again, we had a lot of migrations which had been going on from this portion, from the eastern portion. So a connectivity among people was there. And that is again thought upon, that we have to build up connectivity between people. Now, recently, there are a lot of literatures coming up regarding what happened, that we had a number of Chinese families here who were dislocated to different places. There was one group was taken to and settled in Rajasthan even. So dislocations of population have also taken place, and that shows that there had been migrations from this eastern portion from a long time. And if you look into the medieval history, what we find is that there was very limited contact with the western part. The Ahom rulers also did not encourage connections with the western part. Whatever came, it came as invasions. And we do have immigrations taking place, and Assam and many of these northeastern places are victims of immigration. And that most of the migrations which took place during the British period were mainly because of this it was started with to work in the plantations. We had the tea garden laborers coming from Chotanagpur, Jharkhand, all those areas. Then again, we had lots of East Bengal immigrants entering during the colonial policy, during the British policy, when the British government was running the policy of grow more food, grow more Muslims, Sadullah's period. Those ideas had come in, which had this had also made Assam a burning cauldron later on. The Muslim League, when the question of electoral representative came with the Act of 1935, question of electoral representative came. Then we had a lot of conflicts regarding the Congress and the Muslim League division of seats. So there were migrations from the western part. These were later migrations. But the original people who were here had more connectivity with that of the eastern part. Now here, when we look into this idea of having this interconnection, the government policy of this Indo-Pacific interconnections, India needs to assume a more prominent and proactive role in the present geopolitical scenario. And for that, we need to undo many of the wrongs which were done earlier. So it is not only that we have to build the bridges and the infrastructural developments, but at the same time, we have to ensure that there is peace, there is we have a peaceful atmosphere, we have a good connection among the different states of the Northeast. Now, when I say Northeast, it is not that Northeast is one single homogeneous group of people. When here it is forms the easternmost boundary of India, it comprises 8 largely hilly states. Arunachal Pradesh, it's a hilly state. Assam, to a greater extent, it has a lot of plain areas. Mizoram, it at that time was known as the Lushai Hills. During the time of the British, it was known as the Lushai Hills. Meghalaya, Khasi Jaintia Hills, it was known as the Khasi Jaintia Hills during the British period. Manipur was a princely state. Tripura was a princely state. Sikkim came in only in 1975, and Nagaland was a Naga Hills. The British had forcefully brought in these places of Arunachal Pradesh, which was a northeast frontier tract, that Mizoram called the Lushai Hills, the Naga Hills, in spite of them having their own ethnic identities, ethnic system of working, they were brought in and merged together with Assam. And it was, and this bringing in together, merging it, and at a later time, obviously, you know that there will be, that, excuse me, just 1 minute. Hello, I am in a meeting. So here we find that this at one point of time gradually asserted for independence, which I'll be speaking in the next slide. Now, this region shares an international border, which I have shown you in my first map, of 5,812 kilometers with the neighboring regions of China, Bangladesh, Nepal, Bhutan, and Myanmar. The landlocked northeastern region is connected with mainland by only the 22-kilometer long Siliguri corridor, which is known as the chicken snake. Now, coming to the composition, population, because we need a social interaction to ensure peace, to ensure development. The Northeast has a complex socio-ethnic composition, which includes a large number of ethnic tribal groups speaking some 220 languages, each with its distinctive societal, culture, and economic patterns. Many of them different from those of mainland India. Partly due to its location at India's periphery and partly to its unique societal legacy, complex demographic composition, which I'm saying you, it is a very complex demographic composition which came in again with the coming of the British. Earlier, we did have a number of ethnic communities. I've told you they have a number of ethnic communities, but it is not that they are a homogeneous group, which people in the mainland even today think that Northeast means one group of people, but they have distinct culture, distinct lifestyle, distinct customary practices. So these things needs to be looked into sensitively, and once you give them their own due rights and respect, only then you can ensure space and security here. Now here, because of many of these policies where we find that sensitivity was lacking, and again with independent, when India was independent, what we find? These places were merged together, and merging together, keeping them together for some time, it was only for a short period, and gradually they all asserted independence. Khasi, the hills, they went for independence. Now, you find that during 1972, Meghalaya became an independent state, moved out from Assam. Assam's capital was in Shillong. In 1972, it came down to Guwahati in Dispur. And in 72, Meghalaya broke out. Then Nagaland, Naga Hills was merged together in 1956. They formed a separate they formed a separate unit under the separate administrative unit, and it was only in 1963 that they became independent. Not independent, they had a separate state. Even Meghalaya, it had a separate state. Nagaland also got a separate state in 1962. There was a lot of, so another process of a number of regional parties emerging. Who these regional parties, now many a time what we find is that people mistake regional parties with the coming of terrorism. Regional parties do not have anything to do with terrorism. Rather, regional parties have been working to develop, to bring in an idea, establishing the identity of the people and work towards the development of those respective areas. And here, as I told you, that again regarding the Lushai Hills were also merged with Assam after India became independent, but they were a group of people having an independent, different lifestyle, different cultural, ethnic identity. They did have. They have their own ethnic identity, and they formed a separate. They were made an union territory later on, and it was in 1972 they became an union territory, coming out from Assam, and in 1987 they became a separate state. Arunachal similarly, which was for long the northeast frontier tract, and then they also came out, they were made a union territory, and they became a separate state in 1987. So for a long time there were a lot of conflicts with regard to establishment of separate states, because they were not happy with the union which was forcefully put on them. So this is where we need to give respect to the individual states. Now, along with that, what is happening here in the Northeast is, again, we do have a number of border clashes among the states, because these borders were not scientifically defined. Now, it was the British who had brought in the knowledge of cartography to draw lines. But earlier, we never had an idea of map drawing. And so it was a river, it was a hill, it was a geographical limits which showed us boundaries. And with boundary, hardly did we have so much of clashes. But this came in with the coming of the line drawn through the concept of cartography. And these were some of the colonial legacies which had been imposed, and this had, for the last few years, we had a lot of political instability because of the endeavor to establish themselves, to have an independent state. And at the same time, with all these activities, we do find that regional parties had emerged, a number of regional parties. Each of the states have their own regional parties, because they think, because it is found that from mainland India, they hardly can understand the real problem of this part of the country. This part of the country has problems which the other part of the country cannot even imagine. The border, we have a huge border with the foreign countries, and we find that we have a lot of invasions taking place. We have the Chinese invasion, the Chinese War of 1962. Then we need to be on vigil. Even today, the government is on vigil on the borders area. And we have again the problem of immigration. Now this entire area of Assam, Meghalaya, Tripura, Mizoram, they have a very long border with this Bangladesh. So there is another problem of immigration which has been taking place, and these are issues which needs to be addressed. And only when these things are addressed properly, we can think of development. Now, going back to my slides, I would like to say that the challenge of political violence, insurgency, ethnic conflict, and pressures due to undocumented migration have further added to the difficulties of the region. Its geographical location, surrounded mostly by international boundaries, makes its security an abiding concern. Now, if 1950s and 60s, what we observe, the country's integrity faced challenges by the emergence of internal threats. The Nagas under Fizu had wanted to become independent even from India. And there was a time in 1949 when there was even a referendum whether they will stay with India or outside. And we find that in that referendum, majority wanted to be outside India. But it was again a sideline, and we find once again there was a lot of political understanding was brought in, and finally Nagaland remained a part of it, and they too had, we find that they too had to fight to, they had a lot of political understanding to get a separate state. And because of this, which I have said, the lack of development which had taken place in many of these northeastern states, we find a number of insurgent groups had also emerged among all the states. Even we have the, even Assam, we have the Alpha group, we have the Boro Liberation Front, we have in the KNLF in the west, in the Karbi Hills. Then we have among in Manipur, again we have the All Tripura Tigers Force in Tripura. Then we have among the Garos, we have the Garo National Liberation Army. In Mizoram, we have the HPC. In Manipur, we have the United National Liberation Front. So there are a number of terrorist organizations which had emerged at different points of time. And the whole problem with that is we have an international boundary, and we need to exploit this boundary for a positive purpose, which the new Act East policy is looking upon. And though we had the Look East policy, it started long time back, but working on it took a long time because many of these international boundaries were utilized by many of the insurgent groups to carry on insurgent activities with foreign help. So those things are also some of the retarding factors which needs to be addressed very, very sensitively and with a proper, such a way that we really need development, we really need to work for solving the issues which will bring an end to such insurgency problem. And of course, I feel that with development, insurgency problems can also come down. Of course, development should be very, very sensitive also. As a result of the Constitution of 1950, in 1950s and 60s, the country's integrity again faced challenges, which I've told you, and we did have a number of for external threats also. The Indo-China War of 1962, it convinced that Delhi of the necessity to assert its sovereignty. And because of that, in 1963, we find that they gave Nagaland a separate statehood, because Nagaland was also fighting, and it was, and the government also feared that it's better to keep them in our hand. And so Nagaland got its statehood by 1963 so that all their attention could be diverted towards the frontiers. As a result, the Constitution of 1950 was granted exceptional tutelary powers by the center, hence creating a flexible federalism commonly described as symmetry. However, the increasing military presence and the intensification of the process of national integration kept increasing the growing distrust towards a federal government, damaging even more the native population, already weak, having a weak sense of national belonging. This is what I was explaining just 2 minutes back. The first attempt to foster development implemented at the state was with regard to as a tool to anchor the presence of the state in the region, and its implantation was mostly driven by a security approach that the state used its legitimate and irregular deployment of democratic institutions, hence contributing to the marginalization of the northeastern region. Now, historically, I have told you that Northeast had a very good connectivity with the Southeast Asian countries. And they had an economic connection, they had cultural ties compared to that of Western part. Economic connection with the West was a later understanding, but earlier we had it with the East. Now, if you look into many of the participants are from Northeast, you all know that Muga is has a GI tag in Assam. And if you look into the dresses of Thailand, there also you'll find that Muga dresses are there. Many of the motifs which are there in our typical dress forms, we find it even in many of the Southeast Asian countries. So these are things which we find that having similarity in the geographical ideas, because most of the flora or fauna finds a space in the cultural understanding. So this type of connectivity we did have. We also had a very good economic relation. Trade prospered more with the eastern part than with the western part. And that is why Assam, I'm not speaking only of Assam, the entire area of this area had been aloof from the western part for a long time. And even when the connection came in, for us, we find that when the British entered, through Bengal, connections were established. But again, with partition, what happened? The eastern part of East Pakistan, which is Bengal at that point of time, which was East Bengal at one point of time, became East Pakistan. And this was partitioned out, for which once again, we lost that connectivity. In the post-colonial period, Southeast Asian nations supported India's peaceful coexistence at the historic Bandung Conference in Indonesia in 1955. So gradually, when we have to think of establishing connectivity, it is not that it is something which has come now. This idea had been evolving, and to establish a secured zone, we have seen that even in the Bandung Conference in 1955, we find that the Southeastern nations supported India's ideas of peaceful coexistence. But in 1960s, when with the coming of the Cold War, we had the two superpowers having their own ideas, and we were also part of those superpowers where we also had to maintain our allegiance. And because of that, for a long time, these relations with the Southeast Asian countries were also was also sublime for a long time. And after Cold War, the changed geopolitical dynamic and the growing imperative of an increasingly globalized economy was reinvigorated. And this reinvigorated the dormant interactions between India and Southeast Asia, with India's Northeast region as a center for such engagement. Now, the salience of Northeast in India's regional collective vision is not a new idea. India's diplomatic prioritization of Southeast Asian and East Asian countries has been reflected in its Look-East policy, which came in 1990s. And it was further consolidated as Act-East policy in 2014, which is one of the country's key outreach program for enhancing its interaction with the littoral states of the Bay region and the wider Indo-Pacific region. The foundation and objectives of this entire policy remains the same, but they have been gradually upgraded and given more impetus and focus. Earlier, it was a Look-East policy. At that point of time, even in 1990s, this idea was brought in. We had a lot of problems at that point of time. The insurgency problems was in a very active phase. So opening up our boundaries with Bangladesh, that also could not be thought upon much at that point of time. And it gradually materialized with a lot of discussions, understandings. And again, this took a long time, from 1990s onwards till 2014. It's a long time. So once some of the things were settled, for example, to establish connectivity, you need to have good ports, you need to have a good railway line. So if you have a middle gauge railway line to a certain extent and then a broad gauge railway line, how can you have an connectivity? So those type of things also had to be solved at during this entire period. And gradually we find that the ideas, the policies have gradually started materializing. Now for the development of Northeast, we have the Northeast Council. And this Northeast Council had been working to bring about some of the changes in the infrastructural developmental changes, which are very important. And here we find that the Northeast Council has been playing a nodal, has been appointed as a nodal agency for economic and social development of the region. And the key members here in this Northeast Council includes the governors, the chief ministers of these 8 states. And it is funding, and the funding is towards the improvement of infrastructure in the region. The foundation and objective of this earlier policy remains the same, but it has been upgraded and given more impetus and focus. The Act East policy will strengthen India's interaction with its southeastern neighbors and in 3 important domains: commerce, culture, and connectivity. So recently we also find that there was a Northeast Festival in Thailand just a few months back. So why is that being done? To show the affinity which we have. And with that, and once you have a connection of minds, it is all, you cannot only have connections through papers, connection through monetary transactions, commerce, but you also need to have connection with minds. You have to show that the lines of affinity, and that will create a bonding among the people. Now here, when you find that many of the people in a few days back, I had also read some literature which shows that there are many families in Myanmar today, which was at one time called Burma. They say that many of their family members are here, and then they took permission from the government to visit them. And that was not a partition, they are not partition victims, but they are but their thing was that there had been a process of movement of population. Many settled here, but when the question of drawing maps and defining boundaries came in, with that we find there had been separation of people. So it happened all of a sudden. There was separation of people, and we now again need to bring in the close connectivity, a connection of minds. And with that connection of minds, we can again develop our relations. And that development of relation can strengthen our position. And the geostrategic position, and at the same time, we also have the concept of its area in the geostrategic area where it is fitted, the Northeast region. And that can play a very, very important pivotal role in developing this entire policy of Act East policy. And today what we find, we have a number of projects being materialized in the process of relinking with Southeast Asian countries, especially Myanmar and Thailand. Physical and infrastructural connectivity by road, rail, air, and water through India's Northeast region had been a concern of the Modi government. Here, Bangladesh cooperation is also very crucial. Now, see why I am telling about Bangladesh, why it is their connection is important. Now, when you look into the relations, when you look into the map, let me go back to the map once again. Here in this map, what we find? Now here, Bangladesh has a border with Meghalaya, Tripura, Mizoram, even Assam here. And now this connection with mainland India, if we have a direct connection through the water through Bangladesh, the distance between Agartala and Kolkata, distance between Kolkata and Agartala will be only about 350 kilometers. This will be just 350 kilometers. But now when we are following this entire route through the Siliguri route, through the cutting through the hills of Meghalaya, Shillong, and coming through this entire route, it takes about 1,650 kilometers. Distance between Kolkata and Agartala will be 1,650 kilometers coming through this to the Siliguri corridor, marching through this Meghalaya hills, and then coming to Agartala. But if we have a direct connection through Bangladesh, here we have only a distance of 350 kilometers. So these are things which needs to be thought upon, and this has been materialized now by the expanding infrastructural development which is being taken upon. Now here we find that there has been an attempt to relink the Southeast Asian countries. The Look East, Link West policy. Look East, Link West policy, seeking to link India to global value chains across the Indo-Pacific. In this context, India's Vision 2020 initiative has undertaken 3 key projects in Northeast. The Kaladan Multimodal Project, Building India, Myanmar rail links, and the Trilateral Highway Project between India, Thailand, and Myanmar. So these are some of the projects which are coming up, and these projects, as you all know, and even Bangladesh today wants to join with this trilateral highway project, which we are thinking of linking up with Thailand and Myanmar. So a cordial relation with the neighboring countries is very much important, and that is why we find a lot of talks, discussions with the neighboring regions have been growing up in the recent past. And of course, at the same time, we find a number of insurgency issues which always has to keep us on our toes. And security concerns also take up a lot of our financial resources. And so development, along with this infrastructural development, we also need to think of development in the industrial development should also come up. What the British, yes, during the British period, you will find Assam in the industrial map. But what type of industries were there? They were plantation industries. They were extraction industries. And those industries hardly benefited the local people. Now, in this independent India, we need to think of establishing industries using our own resources. And in this respect, I would also try to reiterate my idea with what Gandhi had once said, that we need to have industries, yes, but not at the cost of human resources. Sidelining human resources, and if you have a lot of machineries trampling over human resources, then what are we doing? We are bringing again a capitalist economy. So we need to develop in such a way industrial development with our local resources. Northeast is rich in lots of resources. It can develop its tourism industry considerably. There are many spots in Northeast which people have not even heard of, but are very far better than many of the tourist spots which people think of going and visiting outside the country. Then again, along with the tourism industry, we can have the weaves. We have multitude of weaves, different material. We have a number of silk like the mulberry silk, the Aries silk, the Muga silk. We have even fine cotton things which can be blended. We have a number of raw material which can produce good dyeing products. So we can have a good entrepreneurial ventures. This is how we need to train up our youths now, to go for be entrepreneurs, to develop our resources, establish industries, and bring up to the forefront. This will not only develop the individual, but will also help in the economic resources. And this can also be a very important source of employment for many to come. Now, along with the idea of developing the connectivity, with this establishing of connectivity, we also can help. We'll have the hotel industries will come up. So a number of other industrial ventures can grow up. So this gives ample opportunity by which we as teachers, this is for faculty induction program, and today the government by the new education policy wants the teachers to encourage students to go for entrepreneurial ventures, not only sit thinking of any government jobs. Yes, if you get a government job, get it, work on it, but at the same time you can think of developing the nature, take it as an initiative. You can be a job giving person. So these are some of the issues which we need to think upon and work on it. Now here India also has a neighborhood first policy, which includes enhancing regional interaction with eastern neighbors. And for this policy too, the Northeast region is very, very crucial. As a signatory of United Nations 2030 Agenda for Sustainable Development, India aims to build resilient infrastructure, promote inclusive and sustainable industrialization, and foster innovation. So in this agenda, we as teachers need to develop our human resources towards this perspective. And to do so in the Northeast also requires developing the border areas and facilitating border trade. In recent years, India's trade with Bangladesh and Myanmar had witnessed a steep rise. Along with trade relations, I've also just in my previous slide, I've shown you how we are also thinking, how the government is also working on developing the infrastructural links. Today we do have road connection. Even now we have road connections between Moreh and Myanmar. So through road connections, we can move up to Singapore, but another trilateral highway is coming up where where the government is working on establishing connectivity in such a way that we can have a coordinated development projects by establishing relations, establishing connections, taking the best from all the areas so that we can have the eastern regions can have that identity. We don't need to always look towards the west to establish because we always have an idea of superiority idea towards the west, which we now need to do away with. And that was something is also a colonial legacy. It was the British who had been bringing about the ideas in such a way that the British had brought in colonialism was not only an economic issue, it was also a social issue. What were they doing? They were trying to show through their education, through their missionary activities, through their health ventures, try to show that whatever here is in India, whatever here is in the eastern part, these are something which lack of scientific dimensions. And it is the Western ideas, Western lifestyle, which is something superior, and we need to inculcate those. And the middle class, upper middle class were very much influenced by those ideas, for which they could easily enslave us. And now we need to do away with those ideas of enslavement and try to have an identity of our own, try to develop on our own. And for that, we need regional cooperation. In fact, Japan has been, we have got a lot of cooperation from Japan here in this respect. And just in a few, just before the COVID situation, when the Japanese Prime Minister had come to visit India, and a lot of discussions, and along with Japan's cooperation, a number of projects are also going on. India had already established connectivity with More and Tamu, and on the Mizoram border also we do have connections growing up on. So we are now another thing, we are establishing connections. This is on the table, but on another side, we also find that there are many border issues, inter-border issues, which also are some of the concerned situations in this northeastern region. So these things also the central government will have to take up seriously. For example, now we are having the Assam-Arunachal border issue, Assam-Nagaland border issue. We have a number of clashes, many innocent lives are lost in that process. So if we need to establish coordination, we need to first strengthen our internal relations and also develop our relations with the neighboring countries with a very open mind. So this only can help us in working for it. So here, Japan's role as a reliable partner in the region is very crucial. The scope for collaborative efforts among BIMSTEC member countries, as well as other, now when I use the word BIMSTEC, I think you all are everyone is aware of it, how this idea has been looked upon, hoping that it's a actually BIMSTEC is a multilateral institution, and it is expected it can contribute constructively to the enhancement of physical, economic, and people-to-people links with Southeast Asia. India can play a very central role in strengthening BIMSTEC as a very meaningful regional architecture in Indo-Pacific. The Bay of Bengal is the heart of the Indo-Pacific, and its auxiliary, the Andaman Sea, is India's geostrategic gateway into the wider waters. Now, conceptualizing the Indo-Pacific as a natural geographical region that hosts a vast array of global opportunities and challenges, India has launched the Indo-Pacific Ocean Initiative to focus on 7 pillars. Now, what are the 7 pillars? It's something which you need to look into seriously. The 7 pillars are maritime security, maritime ecology, maritime resources, capacity building, resource sharing, disaster risk reduction and management, scientific, technological, and academic cooperation, trade connectivity through maritime transport. So given Japan's wide experience in bringing connectivity in the region, its support for the connectivity pillar is very, very crucial. And the Northeast, as I told you, has a very close cross-border ethnic and regional ties with Indian eastern neighbors and Southeast Asia. And apart from physical connectivity, facilitating the flow of people across borders. Closer people-to-people contact would foster greater opportunities for regional interaction. Now, here we also have to look into that before we go far off, the first thing which we need to, in this entire thing we need to develop is establish a very good relation with the countries like Bangladesh, Myanmar, and only after that we can have more easy connection with the other countries in the Southeast Asian region. Now here I would also like to say, but another problem which is working here with this thing is that Bangladesh, we always have a fear of these immigrants coming in. In fact, that is a very important issue in case of Assam, in case of Tripura, even in Meghalaya. And even from Myanmar, we find that the insurgents are taking help from that portion. We find through the Manipur region, lots of drug trafficking is taking place. So these type of negative issues should be on the vigil. And that is possible only when we have people-to-people contact, when we all think of taking this as an initiative. Our resources, human resource should also develop in that way. And only then we can foster greater opportunities for regional interaction. So a combined effort of developing understanding and cooperation among people, region, and countries can ensure peace and prosperity in this region. So as I was asked to complete it within 1 hour, I've tried to keep the time. So thanking you all for your patient hearing. And I don't know how far I've been able to make the situation clear, but my perspective was to explain the colonial legacies, how the northeastern region has been brought in the concept of a separate region as such, when it was always a area which had a very cordial relation with the other East Asian countries, but because of the colonial policies, we were separated from those, and now we need to again work upon and develop a cordial relation. Now the ideas of independent country kingdoms have come in, all are separate countries. So it is how we work in a new political system. We cannot go back to the feudal system. We cannot go back to what was there 300 years back. We have to work in the present system. And in the present system, we need to work with the new ideas of cooperation. We need to respect each other. And only then we can have a development taking place. Thanking you all. Over to the coordinator. So I think now the coordinator will take over it.
Hello, ma'am.
Okay.
Yes. You have finished your lecture?
Yes.
Okay. Thank you very much, ma'am. And from the participants, any questions?